再讀啦。因為我讀啦。An examination of how the state of exception is situated in the legal traditions of the Western states reveals a division, clear in principle, but hazier in fact, between orders that regulate the state of exception in the text of the Constitution or by a law and those that prefer not to regulate the problem explicitly. To the first group belong France, where the modern state of exception was born in the time of the Revolution, and Germany. To the second belong Italy, Switzerland, England, and the United States. Scholarship is also correspondingly divided between writers who favor a constitutional or legislative provision for the state of exception or others. Carl Schmitt foremost among them, who unreservedly criticized the pretense of regulating by law what by definition cannot be put in norms. Though on the level of the formal constitution, the distinction is undoubtedly important, insofar as it presupposes, in the latter case, the acts performed by the government outside of or in conflict with the law can theoretically be considered illegal and must therefore be rectified by a special bill of indemnity. On the level of the material constitution, something like a state of exception exists in all the above-mentioned orders, and the history of the institution, at least since World War I, shows that its development is independent of its constitutional or legislative formalization. Thus, in the Weimar Republic, where Article 48 of the Constitution regulated by the powers of the President of the Reich, whenever the public security and order, the öffentliche Sicherheit und Ordnung, were threatened, the state of exception performed a surely more decisive function than in Italy, where the institution was not explicitly provided for, or in France, which regulated it by law and which also frequently had recourse to the état de siège and legislation by decree. 有冇咩問題大家？
我想問佢呢一頁啦，第10頁第8行，佢提到一個即係呢個 state who unreservedly the pretense of regulating by law what by definition cannot be put in norms。我想問一問 norms 咧喺呢度係點解嘅
？norms 喺呢度都係指一個法律裏邊嘅一啲嘅規範嘅。呢度佢都係 refer 翻 to 個 context 裏邊嘅意思。
咁佢話可以 regulate by law， 但係唔可以喺即係佢有兩個情況啦，一個就係話佢喺法國同埋喺德國佢係嘗試將呢樣嘢定喺法律裏邊啦，另一個就係唔提噶嘛，即係喺其他地方佢哋唔會提呢一。
應該話即係喺法國或者德國嗰度咧，係能夠借用到一啲有成文法嘅源頭，但係喺第啲地方譬如話意大利咁啊，即係突然間彈出嚟。係，即係佢借用嘅唔係真係用。
佢同埋佢最尾嗰度講，就係因為佢憲法裏邊有呢一個條文，所以佢呢一個例外狀態先至係有一個更加決定性嘅一個功能。呢度講 state of exception perform a surely more decisive function than Italy。 Carl Schmitt 當初佢喺威瑪憲法裏邊，佢去解釋嗰樣嘢就係因為憲法裏邊佢唔係佢隱然冇寫落去威瑪憲法佢裏邊，佢威瑪憲法第48條裏邊有呢一條咁嘅條文，關於例外狀態係點樣去處理，所以你見德國、法國嘅呢啲國家先至即係更加有效，你可以或者話有效咁樣去運用呢一條法例去
更加義無反顧去
係啦，去有一個法理依據去做一啲佢哋例外狀態裏邊行使嘅一啲權力。
裏面都已經提到唔單止係即係行使咗之後，仲要有成大班學者去支持去推動佢。咁同而家去即係不斷咁樣要重新翻法治，或者即係不斷咁樣重新翻啲國際法裏面所講嘅人權觀念，其實完全冇意思。即係今時今日我唔知有冇辦法揾到一班學者係會咁樣去 define 嘅話，我哋必要去進入一個例外狀態，然之後賦予國家嘅權力去做呢樣嘢，或者根本唔需要講。
有冇其他嘢？
咁如果即係你話唔係，即係唔係用呢個例外狀態喺度變翻嘅話，咁會有咩方法？
佢回顧翻成個保安法，即係或者23條呢啲，佢唔係將嗰件事形容做一個例外狀態，純粹係即係喺同日常生活裏面去define翻一啲地方個國家係可以巡視一啲即係抵觸晒所有你假設嘅人權嘅權。
其實
即係呢個就好似佢前幾段嗰度所講嘅係，即係而家個行政同立法之間嘅邊界係越嚟越模糊啊，或者係你個三權嘅獨立性好似被侵蝕，你係咪想講？係咪大概係呢個想法？
咁反而佢嘅意思係，即係我哋根本唔需要依賴例外狀態去侵擾我哋嘅，即係假設喺正常狀態裏邊所擁有嘅人權咯。即係譬如我哋而家冇人話俾你聽，香港而家有即係被受襲啊，或者成或者中國唔係，即係當然啦，中國成日都覺得自己俾人推翻危機啦。但係嗰個例外狀態同我哋即係所謂 state of siege 嘅例外狀態好唔同啦。係啊，即係佢嗰個係一個中共嘅恐懼感啫。係啦，咁但係佢即係佢恐懼嘅同時，佢唔會走嚟話俾你聽，我哋而家好危險㗎。即係但
係佢都會即係講譬如話分裂國家咁，深刻呢個係聯想到一個即係 state siege。咁
佢就唔係完全分裂出一個例外狀態出嚟咯，佢係喺和平嘅狀態裏邊，借用一啲 fictitious 嘅意象去令你要接受一啲法律，佢哋係會侵害我哋人嘅。而呢個同三權分立係冇關係嘅。咁當然啦，同三權分立係咪完全冇？嗱，即係譬如你當然可以話喂，中國大陸或者香港根本就冇三權分立啦。咁我哋呢個被即係人權被侵犯嘅危機當然係比較高啦。咁但係譬如你就算到美國咁都好，都唔見得係有啲咩好處嘅，即係譬如關塔那摩監獄，係啦，即係譬如愛國法啊、嗰啲，即係 exactly 就係因為呢啲實例開始講起啊嘛。
sorry， 我搞亂咗就即係佢應該係本書其中有一段，佢係講話即係一啲以往係要立法通過嘅嘢就會變咗，即係而家就往往都變咗做行政命令咁嚟去。
佢都有 act 嘅，佢都有啲 act 嘅。
呢度甚至分
其實呢度佢有分同埋 act 都有分。
佢其實呢度都有頭先都有讀到啦，我哋都有讀到命令同埋法律嘅差別。Suppose 一個政府嘅命令係可以行使 within 法律嘅 border。即係法律所容許嘅，我哋嘅政府可以有行政命令去做。即係譬如政府派人嚟
收樓
譬如掃街咁先算，簡單到掃街。咁我哋唔需要落一條法例，政府要掃街，即係唔需要咁啊。咁所以，但係政府掃街呢樣嘢就 within 呢個法律啦。咁但係譬如我哋去到例外狀態嘅時候咧，就似乎行政嘅法令可以 override 法律添，可以去到一個地步係啦。咁但係 即係阿餅頭先講，譬如23條呢啲，佢就唔係行政啊乜嘢，佢直頭係立一啲法例係侵害人權嘅本身就係，即係可以去到呢個咁嘅地步。
或者其實裏邊都有講，其實佢係好似德國、法國呢啲例子咧，佢係憲法裏邊個憲法個系統裏邊係有相關嘅條文啦，佢入咗去憲法體系裏邊，但係好似英美國家其實都係一樣會有呢一樣嘢。佢有講一個叫 Special Bill of Indemnity 嘅中間嗰度有講，其實依家佢美國政府頭先讀到嗰個 Patriotic Acts， 其實都係我喺憲法以外，我有一啲嘅行政嘅法令去即係去出一啲嘅行政法令。咁其實只不過係佢冇喺憲法裏邊加呢啲咁嘅條文落去。
I think there's two actually very interesting things that are happening here is that like on the one hand, Agamben kind of says that in our time, state of exception is now a regular form of governance, right? So on the one sense, he's kind of saying, okay, well, there's a gradual and progressive indistinction between what is normal and what is exceptional. But at the same time, it's also kind of a dialectical relationship, because he also says that, like, for example, when he says in World War I was a kind of laboratory for them to experiment with certain governmental techniques that they would later normalize and use in everyday life. So, and I mean, I don't know if anybody has read the article that Agamben wrote for this French newspaper, because he was actually told to go to America to do a talk shortly after the Patriot Act was declared, and Agamben refused because he said, okay, at the airport now you have to do the fingerprints and you have to do like the eye scans, and then they take all kinds of biopolitical information about you and all this kind of stuff. And Agamben was saying, you know, if we continue to submit to this, then there's no end to the number of techniques that people can regularly be expected to perform in an airplane or in an airport or whatever. And I mean, in America, it really is getting worse. You know, I mean, I've heard some friends of mine tell me that, you know, if you want to go to a rock concert or something, sometimes, you know, you'll be strip searched, and you take all your clothes off, and then before you go inside and stuff like that. And if people kind of become habituated to this kind of thing, to these sorts of security procedures, it's almost as though, like, this dialectic between the state of exception and normality, they kind of merge into each other in a certain way.